In the grand tapestry of cosmic existence, there exists a fundamental law that even the most advanced civilizations consistently ignore. The more sophisticated your solution, the more likely the universe is to present you with a problem that requires hitting something with a stick. The hegemony of advanced civilizations, 47 species who had somehow convinced themselves they'd figured out everything worth figuring out, were about to receive a particularly brutal education in this principle. They'd built cities that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, perfected the art of teaching mathematics to abstract concepts, and developed technology so advanced it occasionally achieved sentience just to complain about being underutilized. This, they believed, made them qualified to catalogue the galaxy's lesser achievements. Commander Helix of the Nexari Crystalline Collective stood, or rather, vibrated in a vaguely vertical orientation, on the bridge of the research vessel Infinite Wisdom. The ship itself was a testament to advanced engineering, a sleek construct of a living metal that could reconfigure its molecular structure on command, powered by the gentle dreams of domesticated black holes. Helix's form resembled a walking chandelier crossed with a tuning fork, constantly emitting harmonic frequencies that translated thoughts into reality with the casual ease of someone humming in the shower. Another primitive world to catalogue, Helix resonated, the crystalline equivalent of a sigh rippling through the bridge. Tell me, Pack Leader Morn, why does the greater scientific archive require documentation of every single rock with delusions of hosting life? Pack Leader Morn, whose species had evolved from something that looked like wolves but had developed the unfortunate habit of overthinking everything, padded across the bridge on 4 legs, while manipulating holographic displays with 6 additional limbs that emerged from his torso like some cosmic octopus had mated with a German shepherd. His biotechnology was so advanced that his own body was essentially a living starship, complete with internal navigation systems and the ability to photosynthesize his lunch. Protocol demands comprehensive analysis, Morn replied, his words emerging as a complex series of harmonic growls that somehow conveyed both resignation and professional pride. Besides, primitive civilizations occasionally stumble upon interesting solutions to problems we've forgotten we once had. The irony of this statement would later be remembered by historians as what scholars call foreshadowing so heavy it required gravitational compensation. Infinite Wisdom drifted through space with the languid confidence of a species that had never encountered a problem they couldn't solve by throwing more advanced technology at it. The ship's sensors, capable of detecting a single atom's existential crisis from 3 star systems away, suddenly began chiming with the electronic equivalent of mild interest. Distress signal detected, announced the ship's AI, whose consciousness was so advanced it had achieved enlightenment twice, and was working on a 3rd time just for the intellectual exercise. Source: Uncharted World, Designation Verdania 7. Nature of Emergency: Biological entities in immediate mortal peril. Helix's crystalline structure shifted to a frequency that suggested raised eyebrows, if crystal beings had eyebrows, which they didn't, but the harmonic equivalent was unmistakable. Biological entities? How wonderfully primitive. What manner of catastrophe has befallen these simple creatures? The sensor display materialized in the air between them, showing a jungle world that looked like someone had given Mother Nature a creativity grant and unlimited funding. Dense green canopies stretched across continents, broken by rivers that meandered with the casual indifference of water that had nowhere urgent to be. The distress signal originated from a deep ravine carved into the planet's surface like a wound in the forest's flesh. 2 juvenile Volvec, the AI reported with the tone of someone delivering mildly interesting weather updates. Designation: Scouts from our advanced survey team. Current status: stranded, injured, with local predators demonstrating increasing interest in their nutritional value. Morn's 6 auxiliary limbs froze mid-gesture, his primary legs shifting into what his species called the stance of immediate concern. "My cubs," he growled, and suddenly the sophisticated pack leader was just a parent whose children were in danger. How did they become separated from the survey team? Standard exploration protocol. Helix resonated with the harmonic equivalent of checking notes. Young scouts establish perimeter, while adults conduct primary research. Local seismic activity caused a rock slide, isolating the juveniles in a ravine approximately 47 meters deep. Injuries are consistent with impact trauma and defensive wounds from local fauna. The display zoomed to show 2 small Wolvec, barely past the age where they'd stopped tripping over their own auxiliary limbs, huddled together on a narrow ledge. Even through the clinical precision of advanced sensors, their distress was obvious. One appeared to favour his left rear leg, while the other had what looked like claw marks across her flank. "Time until local predators overcome their natural caution?" Morn asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't improve his mood. "Current calculations suggest 6 standard hours," the AI replied. The creatures circling the ravine appear to be thornback stalkers, pack hunters with limited patience and unlimited appetite. They've been testing approach vectors for the past 2 hours. Helix's harmonic frequency shifted to something that might have been optimism in a universe where optimism wasn't regularly disappointed. "Simple enough. We'll deploy molecular. Transportation. Have them aboard within minutes." "Negative," the AI said, with the cheerful efficiency of artificial intelligence delivering inconvenient news. "Planetary magnetic field interference is preventing transporter lock. Additionally, the ravine's crystalline formations are generating harmonic resonance that would disrupt Nexari technology within a 3-kilometer radius." "Bio-retrieval drones," Morn suggested. "Local atmospheric conditions would corrode biotech within 12 minutes of deployment." Both advanced beings stared at the display with the growing realization that their magnificent technology had just collectively shrugged and announced it was taking a coffee break. The universe's sense of humour was beginning to show. It was at this precise moment, when 2 of the galaxy's most sophisticated civilizations were discovering that sometimes a 47-meter hole in the ground could be more challenging than faster-than-light travel, that another ship's communication array crackled to life. "Infinite wisdom, this is Captain Ewan Broadheart of the human exploration vessel Stubborn Mule. We've picked up your distress signal and are prepared to render assistance." The silence that followed could have been measured in geological epochs. Helix and Morn exchanged what passed for meaningful looks between a sentient crystal and an enhanced wolf-octopus hybrid. Humans. The species that had somehow stumbled from hitting rocks with sticks to building starships, in what amounted to a cosmic eye blink. They had been granted provisional observer status in the hegemony, mostly out of curiosity, like scientists studying a particularly interesting bacterial culture that had unexpectedly learned to drive. "Captain Broadheart," Helix responded, harmonic frequencies carefully modulated to suggest polite gratitude while suppressing undertones of cosmic embarrassment. "Your offer is appreciated. However, this situation requires sophisticated technological solutions that are currently experiencing minor technical difficulties." "Roger that, Infinite Wisdom. We show 2 juveniles trapped in a ravine with hostile fauna closing in. Our ETA to surface deployment is 18 minutes. We'll have your cubs topside within the hour." Surface deployment. The phrase hit both advanced beings like a cold slap of primitive reality. The humans intended to physically go down there, with their actual bodies, like some sort of barbarians. Captain, Morn interjected, his growl carrying harmonics of polite disbelief, our advanced civilizations are currently developing molecular-level solutions that will resolve this situation with minimal risk and maximum efficiency. Copy that, Pack Leader. What's your timeline on those solutions? Helix consulted the ship's projections. 14 hours for molecular scaffolding synthesis. 18 hours for bio-drone reconstruction, Morn added. Understood. Your cubs will be dead in 6. Stubborn Mule out. De pain to see, communication ended, leaving 2 representatives of galactic advancement staring at a display showing their primitive human allies preparing to do something that hadn't been attempted by civilized species in over a millennium. Actually getting their hands dirty to solve a problem. The universe, it seemed, was about to teach them something new about the relationship between advancement and effectiveness, whether they wanted to learn or not. The stubborn mule appeared on their sensors like a cosmic practical joke, a ship that looked like someone had welded a freight container to a rocket engine and decided to call it good enough. Compared to the elegant curves and impossible geometries of infinite wisdom, the human vessel resembled a particularly aggressive brick that had learned to fly through sheer stubborn determination. Captain Ewan Broadheart's voice crackled through the communication array with the casual confidence of someone who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve, with sufficient application of common sense and mild profanity. Infinite wisdom. We're dropping a surface team in 15 minutes. My people are prepping gear now. Helix's crystalline structure vibrated at frequencies usually reserved for expressing profound philosophical confusion. Captain, perhaps you misunderstood the situation. The cubs are 47 meters down a sheer rock face, surrounded by hostile predators, in a magnetically active zone that disrupts advanced technology. This requires delicate precision instruments and... Yep, heard you the first time. 47 meters, angry critters. Fancy tech won't work. Got it. There was a pause filled with distinctly human sounds. Metal clanking, someone swearing inventively at inanimate objects, and what might have been laughter. Pack Leader, what's the weight ratio on your cubs? Need to calculate rope strength. Morn's auxiliary limbs twitched in a pattern his species associated with witnessing the impossible. Rope? Captain, are you suggesting manual extraction using primitive climbing techniques? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds almost sophisticated. The bridge of infinite wisdom fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for witnessing small moons spontaneously achieving consciousness. Manual extraction. Using rope. The concept was so ancient that most civilized species had to consult historical archives to remember what rope actually was. Captain Broadheart, Helix attempted, harmonic frequencies carefully modulated to suggest helpful clarification. Our civilizations haven't employed manual labour for approximately 3,000 standard years. Surely there must be a more evolved approach? Sure there is. We could sit here for 14 hours discussing the theoretical applications of molecular reconstruction while those cubs become predator snacks. Or my team can rappel down there and haul them up in 20 minutes. Your choice. The stubborn mule's shuttle bay opened, and figures in environmental suits began floating toward Verdania 7's surface. The lead figure, presumably Broadheart himself, moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd clearly done this sort of thing before, possibly for fun. Surface team comprises myself, Chief Engineer Pax, and botanist Uma, Broadheart reported as they descended. Pax handled mountain rescue back on Earth before he got interested in making spaceships run better. Uma spent 5 years studying survival techniques in places that actively tried to kill her. Should be adequate for the situation. Adequate? The word hung in the air like a challenge to everything the hegemony represented. Advanced civilizations didn't do adequate. They did perfect, optimized, and theoretically flawless. Adequate was what happened when you hadn't applied enough science to a problem. Morn's pack leader instincts warred with his civilized sensibilities as he watched the primitive approach unfold. Captain, our bioscanners show the thornback stalkers have detected your approach. They're repositioning for ambush tactics. Copy that. How big are these things? Approximately 2 meters at the shoulder. Pack hunters, natural camouflage, razor-sharp appendages, and a documented intelligence level equivalent to, so, bigger than wolves, smarter than they look, and they want to eat everyone. Got it. The casual dismissal of creatures that had prompted 3 separate hegemony research papers on optimal predator avoidance strategies was somehow both infuriating and oddly reassuring. The humans touched down at the ravine's edge and immediately began doing things that made both advanced civilizations question their understanding of physics. Chief Engineer Pax, a stocky human who moved like someone accustomed to fixing problems with his hands, unpacked what appeared to be a collection of primitive tools that belonged in a museum. Actual rope. Metal devices that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never heard of molecular engineering. A backpack full of items that the ship's AI couldn't even classify because they predated most databases. Pax, what's the tensile strength on that climbing rope? Broadheart asked, securing what he called an anchor point to a boulder using methods that would have made Nexari engineers weep crystalline tears. Rated for 2,000 pounds, Captain. Should handle cubs and a safety margin. Pax tested his knots, actual knots, tied by hand like some sort of textile primitive, with the kind of care usually reserved for calibrating quantum computers. Meanwhile, botanist Uma was examining the ravine walls with an intensity that suggested she was reading them like a technical manual. Local flora includes ironwood variants and stress vine clusters. If we need to build something down there, we've got materials. Build something. The phrase sent harmonic shudders through Helix's crystalline matrix. Advanced civilizations didn't build things. They manifested them through applied physics and careful manipulation of reality's source code. Uma, enlighten us, Helix transmitted to the human team. What exactly would you build from local vegetation? Depends on what we find down there. Suspension bridge, pulley system, medical stretcher, overnight shelter. Ironwood's got the structural integrity of steel if you know how to work it, and stress vines can be woven into load-bearing cables stronger than your standard synthetic materials. The casual mention of turning trees into engineering solutions prompted Morn to run calculations through his enhanced consciousness. The results were disturbing. Stress vines, when properly processed, did indeed have tensile strength comparable to advanced synthetic materials. Ironwood possessed molecular structures that rivaled manufactured composites. The humans weren't just being primitive, they were accessing engineering solutions that advanced civilizations had forgotten existed. Beginning descent, Broadheart announced, and promptly threw himself over the edge of a 47-metre cliff. Like gravity, was a minor inconvenience. Watching the humans descend was like observing evolution in reverse. No anti-gravity assistance. No molecular manipulation of local physics. Just 3 beings in environmental suits, using rope and metal hardware, lowering themselves into a pit filled with injured cubs and hostile predators through pure application of controlled falling. Cubs located, Pax reported, his voice steady despite dangling from a rope above creatures that considered him a potential appetizer. One with rear leg injury, one with flank lacerations. Both conscious, both scared, both small enough to transport if we can stabilise them. Thornback stalkers closing on your position, Morn warned, his bioscanners tracking the predators as they moved through the ravine's shadows. Estimate contact in 4 minutes. Uma, how's that building material assessment coming? Broadheart asked, with the tone of someone discussing weekend home improvement projects. Good news and bad news, Captain. Good news, plenty of ironwood. Stress vines are perfect for weaving, and I found some medicinal plants that will help with those injuries. Bad news, we can't climb out with injured cubs using standard gear. So we build something. The two advanced civilizations watched in fascination as the humans began treating a life-or-death rescue operation like a particularly interesting engineering challenge. Uma started harvesting vines with movements that suggested deep familiarity with making tools from whatever happened to be lying around. Pax began examining ironwood branches with the careful attention of someone selecting materials for a critical construction project. And somewhere in the growing darkness of the ravine, thornback stalkers began to circle, drawn by the scent of warm blood and the sound of creatures who clearly didn't belong in their territory. The universe's lesson in primitive effectiveness was about to begin in earnest. What happened next would later be taught in hegemony academies as applied resourcefulness theory, though the professors would spend considerable time explaining why hitting things with rocks sometimes worked better than quantum manipulation. Uma's hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that survival often depended on making the impossible work with whatever was available. She selected stress vines like a master craftsman, choosing materials, testing tensile strength by feel, and weaving them into patterns that made Helix's advanced consciousness recalculate structural engineering principles in real time. These vines bond at the molecular level when properly braided, Uma explained, while her fingers created what looked like primitive rope, but registered on alien sensors as a composite material with tensile strength approaching military-grade cables. Indigenous peoples on 17 different worlds figured this out independently. Funny how evolution keeps rediscovering the same solutions. Pax, meanwhile, was performing surgery on ironwood branches with tools that belonged in a museum but worked with terrifying effectiveness. His selection process involved criteria that advanced civilizations had forgotten: grain direction, flexibility under stress, natural shock absorption properties. Each piece was chosen not by scanner analysis, but by the accumulated wisdom of hands that understood materials at a visceral level. Building a cradle system, Pax announced, his voice steady despite the growing sounds of predators testing approach vectors. Weight distribution for 2 injured cubs, shock absorption for the ascent, medical support integration. He paused to examine a particularly promising branch. Should have been standard equipment 1,000 years ago, but I guess everyone forgot how to build things that work. The cubs, Yip and Snarl, according to Morn's pack designations, watched the human construction project with the fascination of young beings witnessing magic. Yip's injured leg was carefully splinted with ironwood strips and vine bindings that provided better support than most advanced medical devices. Snarl's flank wounds were treated with crushed leaves that Uma had identified as natural antiseptics, creating field medicine that actually worked better than synthesized alternatives. Thornback stalkers have overcome their natural caution, Morn reported, his voice tight with pack leader anxiety. 3 adults moving to attack positions. ETA 90 seconds. Almost done. Broadheart replied, testing the vine and bark cradle with the kind of professional assessment that came from years of trusting his life to equipment built in the field. The construction resembled a basket crossed with a medical stretcher, woven from materials that had been growing wild an hour earlier, but now formed a precision-engineered rescue device. The first thornback stalker emerged from the ravine shadows like a nightmare designed by committee. 2 meters of muscle, claws, and predatory intelligence that had evolved specifically to kill things in confined spaces. Its packmates flanked it with the coordinated precision of creatures that had turned hunting into an art form. "Helix," Broadheart called, never taking his eyes off the approaching predators. "Can your ship provide threat assessment without interfering with local tech?" Scanner analysis indicates optimal strategy involves immediate retreat and tactical bombardment, Helix responded, harmonic frequencies betraying growing concern for the primitive beings who'd volunteered for this impossible mission. Yeah, that would also kill the cubs. Alternative suggestions? Pack Leader Morn recommends strategic withdrawal to defensible positions. Morn offered, though his tone suggested he already knew the human response. Right, abandoning injured cubs to save the rescuers. Anyone got ideas that don't involve giving up? The silence that followed was filled with the sound of thornback stalkers testing their approach. Cubs whimpering in pain and fear, and humans doing something that advanced civilizations had forgotten how to do, refusing to accept that some problems didn't have solutions. Pack secured the cubs in the vine and bark cradle with movements that spoke of countless emergency rescues. The organic construction adapted to their injuries like it had been custom designed for this exact situation. Uma's botanical knowledge had created a medical support system that monitoring devices confirmed was actually improving the cub's condition. "Ready for ascent," Pax announced as the first thornback stalker charged. "Someone might want to mention we're about to prove that primitive engineering works better than whatever fancy stuff you've been building for the last 3 millennia. The universe prepared to deliver its lesson with characteristic brutal efficiency." The universe's sense of humour reached its crescendo as 3 humans with handmade equipment faced down predators that had prompted advanced civilizations to develop entirely new categories of weaponry. The Thornback Stalker's charge was met not with plasma bombardment or molecular disruptors, but with Pax swinging an ironwood club and shouting what appeared to be highly technical profanity. "Contact," Broadheart announced, which was possibly the most unnecessary communication in galactic history, given that everyone could see him wrestling with 2 meters of angry predator, using nothing but environmental suit strength, and what Helix could only describe as applied stubbornness. The Cradle system, meanwhile, performed exactly as designed. The vine and bark construction absorbed impact shocks, distributed weight evenly, and provided medical support that kept both cubs stable during what any reasonable civilization would have categorized as chaotic combat conditions. Uma managed the ascent with one hand while fending off a second stalker with an improvised spear that she'd apparently constructed during the fight. "Pulley efficiency is remarkable," Helix transmitted, unable to suppress professional admiration despite the circumstances. "Load distribution calculations indicate the organic construction is actually superior to our proposed molecular scaffolding in terms of—" "Less analysing, more helping," Morn interrupted, his pack leader instincts finally overriding civilized protocol. The bioscanners showed a third stalker moving to cut off the human's retreat route. That's when something unprecedented happened in the recorded history of the hegemony of advanced civilizations. 2 species decided that maybe, just maybe, primitive didn't automatically mean wrong. Helix began providing real-time threat assessment, using harmonic frequencies to create a 3-dimensional audio map that let the humans track predator movements without taking their eyes off immediate dangers. Morn coordinated pack-hunting counter-strategies, sharing Volvec tactical knowledge that turned the chaotic melee into something resembling organised chaos. The Ascent became a masterpiece of improvised cooperation. Advanced alien technology providing information and support, human ingenuity and determination doing the actual work, and primitive materials performing better than anyone had imagined possible. The vine and bark cradle rose steadily toward safety, while its creators fought a running battle with creatures that evolution had specifically designed to kill things in ravines. Cubs secured topside, Uma reported, breathing heavily as she hauled Yip and Snarl to safety. The improvised medical support had worked so well that both young Volvecs were actually in better condition than when the rescue began. Recommend extraction for remaining personnel before local fauna decides to escalate. Copy that, Broadheart replied, delivering what might have been a farewell kick to a thornback stalker before following his team up the rope. Thanks for the assist, Infinite Wisdom. Couldn't have done it without the sensor support. The aftermath was perhaps even more remarkable than the rescue itself. Cubs, Yip and Snarl, who would later insist on being called Braveheart and Swiftclaw in honour of their human rescuers, recovered completely in Infinite Wisdom's medical bay. The vine and bark cradle was carefully preserved and became the subject of intensive study by 17 different research teams. 3 months later, the Hegemony Academy of Advanced Sciences published a paper titled Rediscovering Forgotten Engineering: Why Organic Materials Outperform Synthetic Alternatives in Specific Applications. The lead author was Commander Helix, who had discovered that harmonic frequency analysis of natural materials revealed structural properties that molecular engineering had been trying to replicate for centuries. Pack leader Morn submitted a supplementary report on human pack dynamics and resource optimization, which became required reading for all Hegemony rescue operations. His personal log entry, later leaked to academic journals, included the observation that perhaps survival instincts shouldn't be dismissed simply because they predate quantum physics. Captain Ewan Broadheart received the Hegemony's first ever cross-species cooperation medal, which he accepted with characteristic grace by asking if it was made from materials that could be repurposed for emergency shelter construction. The stubborn mule departed Verdania as 7 with an expanded cargo hold full of stress vines and ironwood samples, requested by no fewer than 12 advanced civilizations who had suddenly remembered that sometimes the best solutions were the ones that had been working all along. 6 months after what historians would later call the Ravine Incident, human rescue techniques were being taught at 47 different academies across the galaxy. The curriculum included courses on applied primitive engineering, organic materials assessment, and why sometimes hitting things with sticks actually works. The final irony, and the universe did so love its ironies, was that the most technologically advanced civilizations in the galaxy ended up learning their most important lesson from the species they'd considered barely qualified to observe their achievements. Advancement, it turned out, wasn't just about building better technology. Sometimes it was about remembering that intelligence, resourcefulness, and the willingness to get your hands dirty solving problems were more valuable than all the quantum computers in the cosmos. The Cubs, now grown into adults, serving as cultural ambassadors, often told the story of their rescue to young beings from dozens of species. Their favourite part was always the same: the moment when the most primitive species in the galaxy taught everyone else what advancement actually meant.